So just to refresh your memories, this is work done in the breech Flystrike resistant flock. It's fundamentally out of Mount Barker, and it was when dags were low. So, in terms of the risk factors for ewes, when dags are low, wrinkle is clearly the dominant factor there in determining strike, but then there's also a bit of urine in dags. And then into the rams, we've still got this significant amount of unexplained variation in the rams, and clearly the anatomical difference between the ewes and the rams is causing that there. And as a source of further inquiry about can we yet find these unexplained reasons. But that's just really setting the risk factors. In terms of what sets those factors and how we score them, there's the dags, urine stain, wrinkle, cover and colour. Now overwhelmingly it's wrinkles and it's dags in the high dag country, and then cover. So the fly really understands the phenotype of the animal, and that's in essence what we're scoring. And then we use these scores and we then put it into the breeding values system, and the breeding value system then gives us some the genetic merit of these traits and also some changes over time. So if we have a look at the merino breed, this is the frequency distribution of these risk factors: early breech wrinkle, early breech cover and dag. And there you can see their scores. So the top is minus 1.5, so the 1.5 wrinkle scores, less than what they were when we first started this in 2009. Down to the bottom, you see where the high wrinkle animal is 1.6. So you can see there a variation of about 3 for wrinkle, about 2.5 for cover, and about 2 for dag. So that then sets a little bit of the benchmarks about some of the further slides that I'm going to show. So top 10% minus 0.7 for wrinkle, minus 0.4 for cover, and about minus 0.3 for dags in terms of breeding values. So that we then come on to, okay, so what is a target in terms of a breech wrinkle or a dag score or a cover score? And this can vary enormously between wool growing regions. Remember, the fly only sees the phenotype, and the phenotype can be expressed in different country quite differently as a result of the genetic breeding value they have. So you can actually go into some quite low wrinkle country, low fleece weight country, low nutrition country. Now that often, it's not negative, but it's a representation of that environment. So in Queensland, to go non-mules, a lot of the Queensland studs about minus 0.3 in terms of wrinkle score. If you go into some very cold, hungry, wormy country, again, the wrinkle score need to be less because there's a lot of those factors taking nutritional value and impacting on the amount of skin that gets growed phenotypically. But then if you go into sort of the salad bowl areas, whether that's sort of the Riverina or the Macquarie region, they're areas that are highly nutritious, highly advantageous environment for fleece weight, but also for wrinkle. So then you need a wrinkle score of about -1 or minus even a little bit higher to end up with a phenotypic score of 2, which we know significantly gets your risk down. So you really do need to understand your country, understand your sheep to know what sort of targets you're looking for. If you're in low dag country, which about half of Australia is, you don't have to worry about dag. And so it's largely irrelevant to you. If obviously the further south that you go, or into the high dag areas, then dag is becoming important. But irrespective of whether you're mulesed or non-mulesed, every 0.1 reduction helps. And even if you're mulesing, if you're starting off at 0.8 in terms of breeding value or even a phenotypic score, every 0.1 reduction you get mulesing is more beneficial to you, and clearly it's more beneficial to you if you're non-mulesed. So in terms of, that sort of sets the scene, but here is some of the industry trends. So you can see here the trends between 2001 and 2016, and you have the merino breed. So if you have a look at the merino breed, there's not much change. There's a slight reduction here in wrinkle. But if you have a look at the medium merino, so this tends to be the South Australian, Western Australian type, a lot of these areas, the differentiation between the types of merino is blurring. But fundamentally, a merino, South Australian, Western Australian type of animal, merino animal, and there you can see quite a reasonable reduction here in wrinkle score that's happening within those type. Now that's invariably on the back of issue around non-mulesing, but it's also on the back of the prime lamb industry as well. If you see there with the fine wools, it's gone from 0 to -0.2, so some downward trend. And then in the superfine, you see that actually the trend is going the other way. Now, clearly the economic conditions amongst the superfines for the last 10 or 15 years there hasn't been a premium here on micron, and really what the superfines have had to do to stay competitive is put fleece weight on. So they've put a considerable amount of fleece weight on, and what has actually happened there is that their wrinkle score has actually gone up. In terms of the Doonies don't actually take a wrinkle score, and a lot of these, even some of the non-mules merino studs can't take a wrinkle score because they're so plain they have no variation. When you put all score 1s in, it spits it back out to you and says no variation. So we're looking at how we can manage that. In terms of DAGs, another high risk factor, especially in the DAG country, and here we can see we haven't made a great deal of progress here. Half of the studs don't worry about DAGs because they're in the low DAG country. The other half, it's still a reasonably new trait that's measuring. Not a lot of studs are measuring it, but in an increasing amount, and it is a much more difficult trait to select for. So that's been the trend with the DAGs. And then also this is cover. So there you can still see that the medium merino is making some progress here with cover. What I haven't put up there is worm egg count amongst the trends, and probably I should have. But there's been significant improvements in trends in worm egg count, and I think a graph was put up earlier showing that the economic losses, for internal parasites is about 2.5 times the cost of external parasites. So here you can see the market forces working, and there's been quite a significant trend to reduce worm egg count, across the board. So just briefly in summary, the medium merino really is making quite impressive gains in terms of reducing breech strike. It's been more difficult in the other types, particularly with the superfines putting on the fleece weight. But nonetheless, a lot of this work went into creating breeding values that were first released in 2009. In genetic terms, that's really not all that long ago, so really quite recent, but significant trends have been making, and the industry is moving on this issue where they can. So that's just a little bit about the genetic trends. Now moving on to the web search. So these web searches have been available for around 20 years, principally in the cattle, in the States and in Australia. But for the last 15 years, this has been available for sheep through Merino Select and the Lamb Plan. And part of the reason why I'm pointing this out is we did a recent survey of wool growers. It's around 22% of wool growers are actually breeding their own rams. But when you're a wool grower who is running more than 2,000 ewes, that bumps up to actually about 42%. So amongst those larger growers, we're now up to about 42% of them breeding their own rams, and hence I thought of going down this path to show you a little bit about what's on the website. So here, if you go onto the Merino Select website and you click here where I've got the blue arrow, you click on Merino Select, and then you click here, analysis results. And then just for the want of it here, I've got clicking here on the Dual Purpose Plus index, and so then you get a list of rams, and it goes through, and these are ranking, I think it's something around 2,000 sires, in decreasing order on the Dual Purpose Plus index. And there you can see that's happening. Then if you click on where I've got that blue arrow, and you can go in and you can actually refine your search further. And one of the options it gives you is you can click on as a trait leader, or you can put in minimum and maximum for a whole range of traits, and then ask it to research. So what I've done here is, just to recap, I've asked it to rank size in decreasing order of the Dual Purpose Plus index. And now I've clicked this little box that says I also want them to be trait leaders on wrinkle. So that's minus 0.7 on wrinkle and less, and then all of a sudden you get a fresh list here. So here you can see the The leading animal, is a trait leader there on wrinkle, it's a trait leader there on cover, not far off on dag, but it's also a trait leader on WEC. But if you then go in and you click on the animal, then you get its pedigree. So I've blanked these out because we're not here about promoting studs, we're here about promoting a system. You don't get the photo when you go onto the website. I've put that on later just to show you that this fella's pretty handsome. But this sire is a sire that's leading on a dual-purpose index, and it's also a trait leader on wrinkle. So there you can you get his pedigree, you see how many progeny he's got, you see how many flocks he's used in, and there you can clearly see he's a trait leader on WEC and doing well on a whole range of traits. You can see what he's been measured for individually, and you can also see how many progeny he's been selected for as well. So really quite a powerful tool there, and you can search on a whole range of functions. So that's just really an introduction about what is possible to help advise people, and increasingly people looking for this information. So there's the search engine. It's a very powerful tool, and fundamentally, an alternative to mulesing, although it's not a breech modification, but an alternative to mulesing, has actually been commercialised, and it's the breeding option, and industry are picking up and running it.